Kathy, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks so much for having the team here. We're excited. We didn't realize, and I should have really looked at the date, but yesterday's elections, what an exciting time to be with the tax colleagues.
Yeah, and we're here at our tax leadership conference right now, and it is falling over election day, so lots of things to talk about, particularly in the tax policy space. But Kathy, some of our listeners may not be aware of what the Trust Leadership Institute is. Maybe give a little bit of background on that.
Sure. So the Trust Leadership Institute's part of PwC's $100 million commitment to embed trust-based principles in business, both current and future. We have over 100 executives planning to join us at our academy in December. Those executives will join us at a program where we'll go through trust-based principles. We'll talk about today's leading issues around technology, cyber, workforce. We'll talk about policy issues, which obviously, we're talking about today. Those executives will also experience some great speakers. So we are headlined by former President George W. Bush. And then we've got leading speakers on the power of trust, Sandra Sucher, who wrote that book. We've got Raj Chetty, who's joining us to talk about economic mobility. And we've also got the assistant director of the FBI to talk about cyber. So the lineup's incredible. The magic in the room actually, though, happens with the executives. So each of the executives will break out into cohort groups. They'll spend time with 10 others talking about leading issues. They'll share their perspectives. They'll learn from each other. Sometimes they'll be the mentor in the room, and sometimes they'll be the one really asking for some help. So we're super excited about the program. So.
That's great. And this is a bit of your baby, right? So your role these days, you're leading the Trust Leadership Institute.
That's right.
I know I was part of working with you to launch it, so it's something we're all passionate about,
yes.
but that's great. So Kathy, if I look at sort of the state and time right now, we're just coming off midterm elections. We just talked about this, literally just in the rearview mirror here. So as I reflect on elections and the important role trust plays in electing public officials, maybe with that as a backdrop, talk about the state of trust these days.
Yeah, so it's been declining. So I would say that today, those institutions we look at for leadership and democracy are at the lowest level of trust they've been in years. I think the latest statistics is that 43% of constituents actually trust in those institutions. On the flip side, business for the second year in a row is looked at as the most trusted institution in society. So business has a huge opportunity to play here and actually leading on trust-based issues. There's also a pretty significant relationship between employers and employees, where 75% of employees actually trust in their employer. That's also a very significant statistic that we focus on. So.
Yeah, and you make this point. Business has a very important role in trying to work through this stuff. Not only, to your point, most trusted institution these days, but there's expectations around trust related to business. Maybe comment a little bit around that.
Yeah, so this has been building for years, but society looks to business to lead on issues like climate, on social inequity issues. They look for reskilling efforts. They're not looking to your typical institutions anymore for that leadership. Yeah. And so business has a big role to play. Customers expect a lot from their businesses that they do business with. Brand is incredibly important. Purpose is incredibly important. Having said that, businesses have a perception of a level of trust from their customers where there's a big gap. So I think the latest statistic is that there is a over 50% gap from what business perceives customers think about them and what the customer actually does in terms of trust that business. So there's an opportunity to close that gap.
Yeah, and you referenced it's very hard to lead in an environment where trust is so critical, but honestly elusive these days. What are companies doing about it right now?
Yeah, so right now I'd say focus on scenario planning, on multi-stakeholder engagement, concepts that we're starting to hear more commonly around stakeholder capitalism. So it's a broader perspective. It's not just about the bottom line. It's about understanding what the stakeholders expect from you. As you know, the conversation around tax as well is evolving, okay, in terms of paying your fair share versus just looking at the most optimistic, if you will, position for the shareholder, right? It's a broader perspective. So we are seeing the level of importance and investment in this. The other really interesting thing that we've seen in our latest pulse survey is that in the top 5 issues that executives are facing on, trust strategy is in that top 5 for the first time. And so I actually thought that was very interesting in terms of the importance of trust in business today.
Yeah, and you're correct. As I sit here in our tax leadership conference, trust is incredibly important to tax. Tax has got a very linked relationship. We have a voluntary compliance tax system that's based upon trust, right?
That's right. Incredibly important.
Transparency, and to your point around taxes paid, et cetera, all based upon trust. So yeah, there's a tight linkage, which is why I'm passionate about the topic and actually what we're doing with TLI. So thank you very much for taking the time to share what's going on with Trust Leadership Institute. I hope you continue to have a bunch of success with that, and I look forward to future discussions.
Great. Thank you so much, Ken.